Borderlands 2 last night, and I didn't realize how close I actually had gotten to the...
Yes, we're recording.
Oh.
You can finish your statement if you want to. It'll just be in the final cut.
Well, we can also we can also edit the episode.
I'm not editing this out. So
welcome to PhD.
Sup, everybody. Welcome to our 9th episode. We have made it to 9 episodes. For all of you haters who you probably don't even know the show exists at 9 episodes.
I don't think we have haters at the moment.
Yeah, we probably only have supporters.
When you're this small name, you can't have haters because there's no one to heard of you and dislike you.
That is true. But yeah, welcome back to PhD Geek. This is Hazak.
This is Pagan.
And today, well, actually earlier what you heard was Pagan talking about Borderlands 2, a video game that we will be doing an episode on. It's a great video game, first-person shooter. And he just beat it. So for fans of the series, you may realize that he's a few years behind, but he's finally beaten the game.
Not the pre-sequel or all of the DLC stuff, but
just
Borderlands
the game.
2.
Just the game, the vanilla game. He has just beaten it. You will learn later throughout this show that Pagan takes a long time to beat any game that is not an RTS.
I actually haven't beaten Into the Void yet.
See? He just does not beat games. It's a problem. Anyway, that's not what we're here about. What are we here about today, Pagan?
We're here about one of the games that is closest in both of our hearts. We're here about a game that
you
has
can just hear his enthusiasm seeping through his voice.
This is me gushing. This is me at my...
This is him at his most emotional.
This is me in the throes of passion.
Whatever demon took his soul, they left but a dribble enough in him. Let me try it. We are here to discuss one of the best games in video gaming history, in our opinions. One of the best JRPGs in video gaming histories, and I believe our both fair's opinion, the best Final Fantasy game in the entire series. That is, of course, Final Fantasy IX. Now, all of you are probably just sitting there staring off into space now going, Final Fantasy what? There was 7, there was 8, and then I remember 10, and then I know some of my friends that played 11, and then someone told me a 12 existed, and I don't believe them. And then I remember 13 and all those sequels. Then I remember the MMO. And then I remember this real cool boy band one that they're releasing. I don't remember 9. And you'd be wrong. And stop following our podcast. I'm just kidding. No. Final Fantasy IX is...
Well, I guess first we're going to talk about its cultural perception since we've already started on that.
Yeah, and that's a really big, important thing about Final Fantasy. Now, for all of you who play Final Fantasy and JRPGs, most of you, and don't try to be hipster with this, most of you started with Final Fantasy VII. A few of you, like myself, probably played other JRPGs like Final Fantasy 6 and or 3, depending on where you're from. But you probably just didn't know what the hell you were playing. Like, you may play Earthbound, you didn't know what the fuck you were playing.
Or they could be younger than us and have started with something like 10.
Yeah, or you could be younger than us, and your first Final Fantasy game was 10. But essentially, Final Fantasy VII is the famous one. It's what everyone knows. It's what everyone goes back to. It is famous for pushing the Final Fantasy series into the mainstream world. It's what made it really big and famous, largely because of it had new graphical details, but also it was angsty. It was dark and gritty, and it had that Matrixy feel and going up against the government kind of ideal set. That was really big at the time, and it became so popular that is actually how you get the Final Fantasies of today. The big swords, crazy governmental involvement, the protagonists that are dark and brooding. All these things you get from these very popular Final Fantasy games, 7, 8. Sadly, 13 is very popular. These are all manifestations of 7. Now, 8, no, sorry, not 8, 9 breaks away from this mold. It returns to the old form. So before 7 hit, you had the traditional kind of Final Fantasy games. You had the whole aspects of ancient worlds and more rustic civilizations and things like that, where they had some forms of technology like in their ships and planes and stuff, but they didn't have laser guns and assault rifles attached to their arms or stuff like that. It's about knights and castles and princesses and stuff like that.
The fantasy genre.
The fantasy of the final, basically. And that is the big takeaway, because 9 came out after these dark and brooding games. And they
were a breakaway from the Final Fantasy mold, but because of the overwhelming popularity of 7 and 8, became their own mold.
Yeah, so you've noticed that all the Final Fantasies released nowadays don't have that fantasy aspect. They're all heavy on technology. 10 a little is in between, but most of the Final Fantasies being released.
12 had a
12 too, but 12 wasn't popular.
Yeah, 12 was also kind of had
12
a
was
vaguely
very dark.
9-ish.
Yeah, it was very 9-ish actually.
Except in unfortunately, the characters.
Yeah, the characters were not very well developed. I personally enjoyed 12. It was not the best of the series by any means, but it was a good game that I think they could have polished even more. It had a rich history. It had a crazy rich history.
I actually really loved the world and the kind of lore and the vague politics of what was going on in 12.
Just characters.
None of the characters had any pop pizzazz.
At most, you had
no
Balthair.
Charisma.
At best, you had Balthair. Balthair was the best one you got.
I thought that what was the name of the guy with the big axe? Or I gave him a big axe.
Bosk, yeah.
Yeah. See, I can't even remember their names.
See,
there was Princess, there was Kid, there was Kid's sister or girlfriend.
Penelope. Yeah, it was his adopted sister.
There was Pirate, there was Bunny Chick.
Balthair, Fran.
Then there was Angry Dude. I can't even remember what his characteristic was.
I don't remember Angry Dude. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Bosk.
Oh, Bosk. He was falsely accused, in the very beginning.
He seemed smoldering.
What?
That was kind of my...
He seemed smoldering? What does that mean? He looked like he was about to burst into flames?
No, smoldering anger.
Well, yeah, he was falsely accused for a crime, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that'd make me pissed.
Well, yeah. Anyway, moving on.
We're talking a lot about games that aren't Final Fantasy IX.
This is important though, because
context matters.
Context definitely matters, particularly for Final Fantasy IX, because the reason Final Fantasy IX is such a big deal for us is because of its breakaway, and in all honesty, if you put everything that's in Final Fantasy IX in any other game, it still would be great because it was that strong. However, Final Fantasy IX is what makes it memorable and the best. Rich characters, rich world, we're going to get into all of that. So, forewarning, this episode is going to be intentionally long. Our other episodes are always long, and you're used to that by now. However, this episode, we are not holding back. If we want to go on a tangent about one thing, we will, but we will carry on to the next part. We love this game that much, and we figured doing our 9th episode on number 9 of the game would be great. Just a little input there. So I will actually... Do you think we should give them a synopsis or just of the game?
Briefly go over the story of the game.
Well, yeah. That's a synopsis.
I suppose we could do that. How much detail do we put into it? Because synopsis could be fairly long.
You see how he takes
all the bits.
forever to figure out things like this? So I'll try to start, and
Okay.
then you can get into it. So a synopsis, basically, of Final Fantasy IX. You play as Zidane. Zidane is a thief, part of a thief's guild, and his task essentially to go and kidnap a princess in order for them to hold her for ransom against this kingdom. And so, sorry, Pagan is being a lazy jackass right now. I just fantasize looking at him like do this shit. Anyway, so essentially, you go in and you're tasked to capture the princess, and shenanigans ensue. You actually do it through a play, a musical, which is actually really cool, to capture her, and then you go forth and you frolic throughout your adventures, and new people are introduced and stuff happens. I won't get into each thing because I do want to give a spoiler warning. All of these things that I just mentioned happen within the first 30 minutes of the game.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be spoilers all to heck and back.
So, spoilers all around. I really do suggest if you have not played this game and you claim as yourself as a person who likes JRPGs or any kind of RPGs in general, that you go out and play this game. It is probably one of the best JRPGs I've ever played. This includes the Tale of series, which I love those video games. But this story, everything, it is, well, it's fan-fucking-tastic.
And there's good news. The game recently came out on Steam.
Oh, yeah, Steam. You can buy it on Steam.
You know, there's no holding back.
Yeah, so you can find it on Steam. I think it's like $20.
15.
$15, even cheaper. And I haven't heard any negative things about the port. So try it out. If not, try it on your PSN store. I've seen it on there. It goes on sale occasionally. You can probably buy a cheap used copy online on Amazon too. So, anyway, getting into it, I will now let Pagan do some talking. What would you like to talk about?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the music. This has a wonderful score, and the artist who was in charge of the music for not just Final Fantasy IX, but many of the Final Fantasy games, has said that his favorite of all the games, of all the projects he's worked on, was Final Fantasy IX. And the score kind of goes back, is much like the rest of the game, a return to form, going back to a sort of fantasy feeling music.
Yeah, the music is definitely more like uplifting and has some epic scores, and it makes you feel like you're in this mystical world, this world that's ever changing based off of magic and mystery and stuff like that. The score is definitely something that you remember. Just hearing the music in and of itself puts you in a certain mood. And it's whimsical, which is not very commonplace in a lot of Final Fantasies.
I was thinking of whimsical, yeah.
When you're in town and stuff like that, there's a bit of a jovial feel with the music. You don't get that even when you're like playing. If you play Final Fantasy VII, you play Final Fantasy VIII, even their happy music seems very stale and static. Not to say that it's necessarily bad, because the world that they live in is made out of metal and stuff like that. But Final Fantasy IX, its world is made out of earthy things, wood and dirt and rock, and you can tell and feel that just through this music.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one of the things that's visibly different about the games, is that Final Fantasy VII seems to have so much of its palette awash in like grays and kind of like rocks, and it's this cold metallic feeling of the entire palette, whereas Final Fantasy IX, I'm going to say that there is a lot of brown, but it's like a bright, it's a the type of brown that you get on a sun-washed.
It's earthy.
Yeah. It's not grit. It's fireplace,
Well, the world is alive, essentially. It's an organism in Final Fantasy IX. When you're playing 7, when you're playing 8, when you're playing 13, you're getting a world that is manufactured, basically. a world that is, robotic in nature, synthetic, and not, again, it's not bad. Well, I hate 13, but it's not bad necessarily when you're looking at it just from pure aesthetics. But it does not carry with it this feeling of mystical mystery that you can get from a lot of video games. The only game that did this, well, actually, all the other Final Fantasies did this, particularly 6 and 4. They're best known for that. And so, but yeah, so the music is one part, and since we're talking about the music and how much it gives that kind of clarity and connection, I guess the best part is now going into kind of like the return to the old school style. We've mentioned a few times already that it has this in there. And what I mean by return to the old school style is that Final Fantasy is...
We don't mean that in a, like, mechanics or a...
Well, it does do that mechanically, too.
Final Fantasy... there's not too much of a difference between the mechanics of 9 and 7, for instance.
No. I would beg to differ that strongly.
Well, it's definitely more like 7 than it is like 12, for instance.
Yes, but then you're saying, like, just because it's more like 7 than it's like 12 doesn't mean there's not a difference.
Fair enough.
So when I'm looking into it, Final Fantasy IX is significantly different because it's just really just one thing. One extra person. That one extra character changes up an entire battle system completely. So for those of you who play the more commonplace JRPGs nowadays, and JRPGs in general, outside of course the Tale series again, you're going to have typically 3 people in your party. This system is actually more new than the previous systems. In other JRPGs, you're typically going to have 4 people in your party. Typically that will be your mage of some sort, your attacking mage, then your healer mage, your mainstream glass cannon, and then a tank of some sort. That's typically how you're going to configure your party, unless you're a mad person and you want to just send out all mages or something like that. So having that is a big component to making the game much more intuitive and manipulative for the player. When you have 3 people, you're locked into, I need a healer, I need a tank, I need an attacker. Typically, you're going to follow that basic structure. However, when you get 4 people, then you get to play around because the game gives you at least, 3 mages? 4 mages, technically? Mm-hmm. And at least 4 types of attackers. So you get to change up which ones you want to put into the game. That's definitely one aspect of the old style that I think it returns to. Of course, we mentioned before, another part of the old style it returns to is the just the jovialness, the whimsical nature that is presented in fantasy games. And then that also connects with not only the music, but the artwork that we mentioned before. The art, to me, is almost as perfect as you're going to want from an original form of work for a video game. That's it.
It's PlayStation 1 era graphics, so there's the overworld, there's the towns and different like dungeon areas that you go into, which are typically, they look like painted backgrounds that you're walking in and around, and then there's the battle screen, and so it's not the highest fidelity, but it does have a wondrous art style. Everything feels cohesive and imaginative, and it's just a beautiful game.
It's really like playing a storybook, actually, when I think about it. It's like playing in like a pop-up storybook, stuff that was emulated later on in games like God, what was the name of that game that you played so much but I never played because I was disappointed in it? Fable. There's a long story behind Fable. We'll get into that another day.
We'll probably do a Fable.
We should do a Fable episode. That whew, that game almost disappointed me as much as Mighty Number 9. We'll do an episode on that too. Also, just a short mentioning, if I sound nasally or weird, it's because I am sick. But I will not rest for you guys. Yes, I
no sniffles shall stay.
No sniffles shall stay me. Yeah, I just got off my first year of grad school, and I have internship starting very soon, literally in 2 days. In the last 2 days I've had a vacation, I got sick. So I got off of school, got sick, and now I'm going back. That's the life. It's wondrous. Anyway, that's my sob stories. So, looking at themes, we have a lot of themes.
There's a lot of theme in this game.
I'm going to let Pagan pick a theme. We're going to tackle that thing.
So, I think I would say that the main theme of the game is this idea of accepting accepting yourself as what you are, and needing that acceptance from others as well.
Yes. So, do you want to keep elaborating on that? Or?
There's a number of a lot of the characters have this internal conflict of how they feel compelled by two different masters to a certain extent. Like Steiner, for instance, he feels definitely a strong duty to his queen as a member of the royal guard, but he also knows that his conscience is telling him that the queen's actions are they aren't of good nature, and that and especially this is made manifest by the princess acting against her mother, and so now Steiner has to choose whether he should obey duty or his conscience.
Yeah, Steiner is a very good example. He's a person that comes off as kind of brash and kind of angry all the time, and it is because he holds so key to his duty and responsibilities. But also those responsibilities and duties also manifest in him being good-natured towards people. There's several missions you have with just Steiner alone, where he's interacting with his soldiers and recruiting his men and stuff, and it's different ways you can interact with them and how you respond to them. And Steiner tends to have conflicting issues within himself when it comes to that, just because of his dual nature of a good person but also a duty-bound person. And this actually starts coming up more and more when he interacts with the party in the group, because like I said, mentioned before, Zidane, who's another main character, is a thief, but he's a good person. He just robs people a lot. And so Steiner, as a knight, as a policeman, essentially, he's duty bound not to be respectful to this person, to want to throw him in jail. But because Zidane has shown time and time again that he can be actually quite chivalrous and helpful and loyal and honorable, Steiner finds himself usually at odds and very angry with Zidane and himself because of that kind of struggle with him. Steiner's a great example, and then of course there's Zidane, who is my favorite example of all of them, next to Vivi, and we'll get into Vivi. When it comes to Zidane at the beginning of the game comes off extremely calm, cool, and collected. He has everything together. He is a smooth talker. This guy is a ladies' man. He can get what he wants when he wants it.
He definitely seems confident in himself.
Yeah, extremely confident in himself and capable. He usually says he's going to do something. He usually does it and pulls it off. Typically, it seems, with ease. Popular guy, great with people. However, later on in the series, spoiler warning, you figure out that Zidane is not actually human, and which should be apparent at the very beginning because he has a monkey tail. But then again, if you look at the characters in this game, no one actually just looks human. Only there are a few characters.
There are plenty of people who are there are plenty of real humans, but at the same time, there are plenty of people who are like fucking weird. Like the Queen of Alexandria is giant and blue.
Yeah.
There's Vivi, who is
Well,
we'll get into him,
Vivi.
but you aren't actually certain if he's human or not. There's like furry anthropomorphic characters walking around. So Zidane having a tail.
It's like whatever. Like it's just like this guy has a tail. Okay, cool. Which is a great kind of representation of how a great society could be with differences in demographics, which is awesome. But Zidane is actually not even from the planet.
And granted, they only use that tail like once, and it's not
He's
in the story.
in a few scenes.
Very rarely.
Rarely.
But when he does use it, it's a nice touch.
Yeah. And so Zidane is actually not even from the planet, and he finds this out later on in the game that he's actually.
And this is a big deal. It's not like sci-fi or other fantasies where planet traveling is commonplace.
Yeah, no.
It's a huge deal that he is of this other species.
Yeah, and his species that's in question is actually manufactured and created, almost basically clones. And so he has this huge struggle with himself for a little bit in the ending portion of the game because his entire world has kind of been shattered and destroyed in that one moment of realization.
Should we just go like full spoiler?
Well, we're going to go full spoiler. How can we talk about all these characters?
Yeah.
It
just seems like talking about this one is like very. In order to really get into the meat of it, you have to go full spoiler.
Yeah. And so he finds out that, being part of this species not only comes with it the fact that he's a foreign body on a planet, but also the fact that his father figure, Garland, correct? Garland is the
guy who manufactured him.
The guy who manufactured him is not all too great of a dude. He's a bit of a douchebag.
And that Zidane's purpose was to... The planet that he is from is dying, or the people that inhabit it are dying, and they're going around to other planets and like sucking up their soul energy. And Zidane was made to go to Gaia, the planet that everyone else, that the story takes place on, and like eat it all.
So basically, Silver Surfer and Dragon Ball Z.
Oh,
If you read comics or if you watch anime, those are literally what those two stories are about, basically. Silver Surfer is a harbinger for... oh my goodness, the name just went out of my brain.
Galactus?
Galactus. Yes. Sorry.
I don't know how many syllables
the mucus in my membrane. And so, like, essentially... that's what that entire point of his existence is about. But then, if you look at it, and we'll get to this character too later on, it's in conflict with his biggest rival and enemy, Kuja.
Yeah, he is. Zidane is essentially Kuja 2.0.
Right.
It's revealed.
And so that gives a whole bunch of identity issues and crises with Kuja himself. But we'll move aside from Zidane because he could be just a whole entire archetype that we could break down too. And then we'll move into Garnet and Vivi.
Yeah.
Whichever one you would like.
Garnet, I think, because we'll start off kind of like dealing with the easier characters before moving on to the heavier themes, I think.
Well, I would not say that anyone has an easier time. I think Steiner has the easiest. Garnet's pretty... her story's kind of heavy too.
But it's also not as...
It's not in the moment. Like, Vivi is dealing with his throughout the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but yeah, Garnet, you want to start?
So, Garnet is the princess of Alexandria. She is the princess that the Zidane steals in the very opening act of the game. And
that could be said to a whole bunch of feminist issues. But we'll get into that.
Granted, she is also the princess who has hired the troop
don't spoil it. This would be great for the feminism portion.
Okay, fine.
It'd be great. It'd be like,
gotcha. Anyhow, her biggest conflict is there are two big conflicts in her storyline that she has to deal with. One is, how do I, as a princess, I am supposed to act in my nation's best interest and also with the best interest of her mother, the queen, and those two are at odds because she sees that her mother is being a warmonger, and she is trying to seek foreign aid in dealing with dealing with the queen.
But then, not only just that. Remember, Garnet is not of technically the human species either. Remember that she was.
That's probably like the third or fourth of Garnet's worries, though.
Yeah, and well, but that's a very important thing, is we're talking about this struggle with identity. Her identity is literally shattered in almost 3 different areas, 4 different areas if you think about it, because she has the loyalty to her mother's kingdom and her mother, her uncle Sid's kingdom and them, her herself, what's being true to her and herself, and her friends, and then her just identifying that, oh my goodness, I'm part of this.
That summoner tribe.
The summoner tribe, that was wiped out of existence, and so there's this whole kind of understanding that she has to toil with a lot of things, to the point that a tragedy happens that's so bad that Garnet is permanently silenced.
Well, not permanently. It lasts
she's silenced for a very long time.
She's silenced for like half a disc of the game.
Yeah.
So
and as the mage, as one of the white mages in the games and summoners, that was
crippling.
But it's also, oh my goodness. So we're going to go a little bit off on here, but that is how you can implement parts of a game into game mechanics and vice versa.
Yes. A lot of times when you're talking about JRPGs, you're going to hear the term ludonarrative dissonance, which is where game mechanic and the narrative do not interact. For instance, why can't I use a Phoenix Down on what's her name?
Aerith?
Yes,
because we hate her.
Well, some people like her.
Well, they were dumb.
Well,
she died, and
I'm
glad she died.
But the thing is that, why can't you just use a Phoenix Down on her?
Because no one likes her.
And don't get me wrong, there are probably pieces of ludonarrative dissonance in Final Fantasy IX that I cannot bring to mind at the moment. But this is a great moment of ludonarrative integration, where you have the silence mechanic where a person cannot cast spells, and the narrative of a traumatic grief muting Garnet, which then mutes her in the game.
Hell, think about it. The black mages alone, whenever they got damaged and they came back to fight you, they were weaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like they always connect. They always connect some part of that story if you're going into. Oh my god! Like, I already knew Final Fantasy IX was fucking amazing now. But I am literally thinking about this game and how much it connects its story narrative and its mechanics together. It's fucking amazing. Anyway.
When you marry those two, that's when you get into the really, good parts of game design. That's when things are choice.
Yeah, and this is stuff that we're thinking about, a decade later. And, video game terms and stuff like that. And so, but moving past Garnet, and we'll get more into her, particularly in our feminism piece, because she is amazing if you think about what she's dealing with.
I guess if we're going to start with the easiest characters arc, is that what you were going to launch to?
No, I thought we were going to go to Vivi now.
Oh.
Time to get a little bit shit.
By the way, this brings up an interesting commonality between a lot of the main characters, is that there is some form of abandonment or adoption. Because Zidane, Vivi, and Garnet were all adopted.
Echo, technically.
Yeah.
She was
Echo? Whatever the fuck your name.
She's cute. She was adopted by the Mughals.
Yeah.
So,
although that's kind of a weird raised by wolves situation, because Mughals aren't exactly the best parents.
Mughals are not wolves, though.
Mughals are not wolves.
They have their own. They are the mailing system.
Mughals are kind of
civilization going,
or not if you follow that subplot. where the Moogle mailing system breaks down because one Moogle kept rubbing himself with Koopa oil.
That's disgusting. But it's true. So, but no. So yeah, there is a sense of abandonment and loss in this game, and I think that is what's so great about it. This game doesn't like pull its punches on you just because it's whimsical and fantasy, haha, love. It's like, this is the world. There's happiness going around while this guy's depressed. Like, this is the stuff that happens.
Yeah, this is actually one of the, showing contrast of having a general good feel world, or a kind of happy, bright, colorful sense of things, and then having tragic events happen in those, and having to deal with heavy issues provides contrast and makes it all the more effective.
Yeah. And so when we're thinking about depression and talking about contrast between something that looks happy but also sad, Vivi is probably Vivi is probably the if you have a teenager or someone that's young, hell, if someone that's older and they're going through some stuff, they may need to play Final Fantasy IX, because Vivi is probably a great representation of depression and struggles with depression in general. Vivi is this small black mage. And black mages in the Final Fantasy world means that they study some kind of arcanic arts that's lethal in some sort. So they can cast fire, water magic, lightning, ice magic. They do damage. They're damage dealers. However, in Final Fantasy, that is taken a little bit literally, as the characters who are black mages are clothed typically in mage-like clothing with a giant mage witch hat. Think Harry Potter if you want to. And their faces are literally black. We're not talking some fucked up racist shit like their black face. No, their face is a mist of black. I don't know if it's solid or not.
Some of the games seem to imply that this is a shadow cast by the hat. Mm-hmm. And some of the games seem to imply that it is a manifestation of the grim magics that they practice. But with Final Fantasy IX, it is more literal that these are. Should we just go ahead? Because this does happen fairly early on, and it is part of what sets Vivi into
I guess, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, okay. First, let's give the context of when you meet Vivi. He's a kid, and
wandering the streets, basically.
Yeah, you don't really know what his deal is yet, but you just know that he is a kid wandering in the streets, and he meets up with a.
Are we really going into every single detail?
Okay.
He meets up
with the cast.
Yeah.
And his powerful black magic make him very useful. Him and Steiner create a. Steiner has a great deal of respect for his arcane arts. Zidane recognizes that he's useful and also appreciates him almost instantaneously in a little brother.
Yeah, in a very little brother sort of way.
And they stick together, but as they progress, moving along the plot, they find this town where they realize that black mages are being assembled, manufactured by using the mist in the game. That's a very important narrative mechanic, as well as the some other magic stuff, and they're just creating shock troopers.
So essentially, Vivi's a doll. That was a very long-winded way to get there, but yeah. So what Pagan was trying to say is that Vivi's a doll. Vivi is he's manufactured, and he finds that out, and he also finds out that his life is limited, or is assumed to be limited.
Although it is limited.
Yeah. So. Throughout most of the game, we find that Vivi has to deal with the fact that he's only been alive for so long, not even long enough to be considered a baby, and in human standards, and that his life is finite, and that he only has a few more years to live at max. And this is something he struggles with because he has the nature and the mindset of a child, and it's like a child finding out that they are going to die. So it kind of reflects something such as children who find out that they have cancer or some kind of terminal illness. And I believe, for my opinion, that it does a really great job at representing these hard struggles, that they're still trying to be children and they still want to enjoy their lives, but there's that thing hanging over their head and how they function. Of course, it's a fantasy game, and things good do happen for this character at some points in time, but things bad happen a lot to Vivi. And not only is he finding out that his life is finite, but his entire species, his race, they are programmed to kill other people. They are soldiers. Actually, no, I take that back. They're not soldiers. They're drones. They are being produced to have a hive mindset where they listen to only orders and they just do what is told of them and kill whoever they are ordered to kill. I feel that this is unbelievably awesome to have characters do this. To have a game that does this, to help represent these struggles of connecting with one's youth and wanting to live and wanting to grow, but also understanding that death is very close by with this character. And then also that sense of a lack of agency. Vivi feels he has no control over what he does for the longest time, and he constantly is questioning himself. I dare anybody to play this game and not feel something for Vivi. Like, if you immediately play this game, he already presents himself as a kind of hard-struck character. He trips a lot, he waddles, he listens to anyone, he's gullible as fuck. It's a oh man, it's amazing that this character is developed in that way. Vivi's awesome. But also when it comes to Vivi, it's important to understand Vivi has insane strength, and not only is he constantly struggling with this, but he tries to handle it sometimes on his own. He learns to rely on his friends, and also in the game itself, mechanically, again, this is the best awesome thing, he is one of the smallest characters, but he can deal some of the highest damaging attacks, some of the most amazing and fantastical attacks, and it is constantly rung in his head by his friends and everyone just how amazing he is. He literally gives one character, Steiner, an entire different move area, by enchanting his sword. It's amazing. I love Vivi.
Vivi is definitely one of the poster characters of the game. If it was big enough in the mainstream, I'd call him iconic, but unfortunately Final Fantasy IX is still very much a hipster's game.
Yeah, Final Fantasy IX is a hipster's game, but I would say he's slightly iconic. He is in the later Kingdom Hearts video games.
He's in Kingdom Hearts 2, but I don't really feel that was a very great representation of Vivi.
No, it was not, but they were just trying to hearken towards people. But that's mainly on kind of like identity and stuff like that, and struggles with that. It also kind of harkens into death and acceptance. Something that we've kind of touched on already is a lot about acceptance, that these characters have to kind of struggle with certain things that come up and things they have to process through, and they have to learn to accept that this is their reality. And death is one of those biggest things. Death is literally touched on in the game at least 3 times just as a scene, particularly with the mages, the black mages. They have like a scene where the black mages, there's a point in the game where the black mages are freed and they live in civilization, and they start discovering that some of their friends just stop moving and don't move anymore, and they're struggling to understand what that means.
Most of those black mages have a vaguely childlike or
almost all of them have a childlike
they're
nature.
Somewhat simple-minded, where they definitely understand some things, but they're also they don't understand death very well.
Well, in a sense, they were all just being born.
Yeah,
So.
But then a couple of them are more aware than the others of like what it means, and they're all, as a community, they are trying to come to grasp with not only what it means to lose others, but to know that one day they will cease living as well. One of the other on death, the other big one that I can think of is Garnet and her storyline. Or what were the three that you were thinking of?
Well, when I think of death, I do think of that, but I also think of the other three black mages, the main villains, the Waltz. The Waltz are three black mages you meet throughout the game, and you kill the first two, as bosses, and that's it. But you have the third Waltz.
The third Waltz, he comes back a second time after you beat him.
Yeah, and the Waltz has a very difficult. The third Waltz has a very difficult time accepting that his life is coming to an end, and trying to accept the reality that he is not only going to die, but accepting the reality that that he is a tool, that he didn't have free will or things like that. And it shows, like, he's struggling and very weak when you first meet him, to the point that I usually always feel bad when I destroy him for the final time, and that's saying something, because he was a douchebag.
He was a complete dick when you first met him.
Meet him.
The waltzes are also a very the way that you meet the first Black Waltz was you only had Zidane as your playable character, and so you had to fight this boss mano y mano.
Yeah.
Except that it wasn't mano y mano, because he bought a fucking giant sea lion creature thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a hard fight.
That's always an intense fight. Always. And we've played the game multiple times, and knowing that it's coming does not take the chill off ever.
And then when you meet the second Waltz, it's at the end of that emotional scene where Vivi has discovered that the people that look like him were manufactured, and what the fuck does that mean? And then all of a sudden comes this Black Waltz, and you have to fight him in this intense emotional moment, and he's a pretty hard fight too. And then the third is similarly at the first time you fight the third Black Waltz is similarly at the end of really high intensity moments.
Yeah. They're always about some kind of intense struggle and connection, and if you notice, they're usually going to be some kind of struggle for Vivi, particularly when it comes to that. But what were you saying about Garnet?
Well, we were talking about death, and one of the game definitely deals with death in a very real way for Garnet when her mother dies. I think it's over halfway through the game.
Yeah.
After that fight, or that's when she has that traumatic experience and goes mute for a while.
Yeah.
And that's I'm actually getting that wrong. That she goes mute after Alexandria gets bombed.
Yes. And does her mother die then?
No. They were at the Ifa tree or Leafa tree, however you say it.
Yeah, Ifa tree.
And there's that cutscene. Her mom dies. Then you actually go back to Alexandria, and she's going to have to become the princess, and everyone's thinking that she's leaving the group. And Zidane actually gets mopey for a little bit there, because he's like, oh, well, what am I going to do now?
There goes my one-time girlfriend that I may ever get in my life. And so, yeah, there's a huge thing about death with her and her mother. I think that's a good point to make, because that is one of the more ones that we can relate to on a human level. You can definitely, I think we can all relate to the Black Mages, But since you know that they're dolls and manufactured, there's that ideal set that, yeah, they're going to expire.
The way that I think about it is that Vivi's storyline is very much from a kid's perspective, a child's perspective of like realizing that you are part of this group that is the way in which this group is made. Humans is kind of weird and maybe uncomfortable for you, and that sometimes the people that look like you have done terrible things in the past and are going to do terrible things, and you have to come to terms with accepting that you are a part of this group.
That could also be connected to sometimes like racial identity.
Yeah.
And struggles with that, particularly because the black mages, well, not only are they called black, but they also are chastised and attacked sometimes by other people in the game because they look like the people that attacked them and struck them before. So you're getting into all sorts of dynamics. God damn it, Final Fantasy IX. Do you not know how to do anything right?
Or do anything wrong?
Do anything wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean. And so, but yeah, there's all these connections.
Yeah, when you had mentioned thinking of Vivi as a kid with a child with cancer, I was also thinking of taking it more metaphorical and thinking of like, because even me, I kind of definitely identified with Vivi when I was playing this game younger, because I was very awkward and I didn't really like the whole me thing was very weird. And Vivi was also having that thing of like, who the fuck am I and how do I do?
I think that's actually an important thing to think about too, because even in the game, I would name Vivi Pagan's real name on the game, and I would name Zidane after myself actually a lot, because I identify with Zidane, not just because he was the main character, but because Zidane actually had part of my personality. Zidane comes off as very external and happy and jovial and always excited to be around people and do stuff. But inside for Zidane, there's always this constant struggle of being accepted and doing things to make people happy. And now we're getting into some kind of self-revealing things here, but like it's true. Like it's Vivi for Pagan is, if I'm correct, certain things about struggling and identifying and understanding things that's happening around you and not feeling that you have that control or capability. While Zidane for me is being a person that shows that capability, has that confidence, but at the same time has to meet these demands and struggles with these things and identifying themselves with things and being part of a culture that you're not thought to be part of, that you've been separated from, and you struggle with that, trying to identify that piece. And so yeah, both these characters are very strong towards us, and these are things that we learned and kind of saw through the game, but after we played the game and played it again, and it speaks a lot to the game because there's very few characters that I can actually see that strongly resembling us as individuals too. So if you play these games and you see characters like this that struggle, and it's not just those two, and even side characters are great. We'll get into them in a bit, but yeah, there's that whole deal with acceptance and understanding that I love. And we also touched on loss as well, which was another thing. We didn't really like mention it, but as you guys have heard already, there's a good deal about loss in that game, man, about acceptance.
I think that when we're talking about death and loss, we also have to bring up Aiko again, or we need to think of how to pronounce her name.
Whatever. Aiko, Echo. No one's playing this game.
No one does play this game. You meet her later on. She's a Disc 2 character, I think.
Disc 2, yeah, probably Disc 3. Yeah.
She is an abandoned kid who, an orphan.
Close to Vivi's age.
Who is living in the bombed out husk of the Summoner tribe, where they used to live. And she's kind of she's half being raised by and half
raising
the like,
Moogle.
Like, because Moogles are halfway between kids
and adults.
Cats and adults.
Yeah, they're like Moogles. If you have never played a Final Fantasy game, Moogles are little bear people. with little bat wings. They have like little, really tiny bat wings, but they look
They
like
have
bears.
pom-poms.
And they have pom-poms.
Attached to their
and
head.
not pom-poms as in the cheerleader pom-poms. They have like this big antenna that stretches out from their head, one antenna, and this gigantic red ball. It looks like a clown's nose that hangs off of it.
You just want to touch it.
And it's like an angler fish, if you look at it. And like...
They are kind of cute personified.
Yeah, they're the mascots. Next to the Chocobos, they're the next mascot of the Final Fantasy series. And in every game, they're different. But I feel in
9 they use the best because they are your save system.
They're your save system.
When you see a Moogle, that means you can bring out this big old storybook that you can write down where you have gotten, as if the theme needed to be, the fact that this is a fairy tale needed to be pushed any harder.
And so you write it in, and not only do that, they have like the mail system and everything.
Which is a cool mini game.
Which
helps
is a cool
flesh out the world.
Yeah, and so...
see, you can have a mini game that adds to the narrative instead of
Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8, we're calling you out, you bastards.
Honestly, there's tons of games that have detracting mini games.
Yeah, like a great mini game is how Final Fantasy does it when you don't actually know what you may know it if you're like very observant in video games, but it's not a mini game. Another series that does this is the Tales series, kind of. They have a few things in it that's not mini game-esque, but it's like parts of the game. Tales doesn't really focus on stuff like that, though. Tales is usually about narrative.
Though admittedly, Final Fantasy IX does have its own mini game that you can get lost in.
Oh yeah, but we'll get into that. So they have mini games, which they're mini games, but they're done so well you don't care.
And actually, even how many jumps did you make it to?
Boy,
Hazak,
I got to the top jumps once.
Oh, I didn't even bother. I got to like 9 and gave up.
I beat every mini game in that game to perfection. So I wanted to actually. Did we finish what we were talking about beforehand?
Tangents, man. Okay. Just
we got infinite tangents.
With tangents upon tangents upon.
We like this game. It happens. So
it's like, in order to understand the way that our conversation is gone, you have to be like a fifth dimensional being.
Anyway, I actually wanted to get into something I think is amazing. Now we're guys, and we're gonna slightly mansplain it. Probably. I don't think we will. I hope we don't.
Well, we are going to attempt to not mansplain.
We're going to attempt to not mansplain.
But at the same time, we recognize that we are dudes talking about feminism, and
until the world has fully learned how to teach that correctly to everyone in a healthy way that doesn't involve people becoming stupid idiots, well, we're going to be limited.
Yeah. Also, F word alert.
Oh yeah, feminism. Rah, 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 rah. You mean we can all be equals? No. So, feminism in this game.
Nice goat voice there.
It's touched on quite a lot. Not in an overly obvious way, which are my favorite types, because it makes it seem natural and part of the world, how feminism should be. It's not that bullshit stuff that you get from like Lara Croft. Look at her climb the mountain and be doing all the man things. Or,
some things are a touch on the nose, and this one is downplayed to a certain extent. But you can, me and Hazak see feminist themes in the game. Yeah,
and I also wasn't going to say, I want to say downplayed though. Downplaying, what I want to say is it is integrated into it in a natural way, because downplaying would be the opposite of Lara Croft and be like, oh, well, we have a girl in the game, and that's feminist. And that's not what feminism is, particularly in video games. Usually can be the opposite. And so in Final Fantasy VII, the women characters that are present in the game are very much part of that game. They have as much importance as the main characters, but also sometimes have more importance than the main character. It goes up and down. Every character has a different take. They're people, and thus that is something I think is amazing. So, if we're going to start to talk off in Final Fantasy IX about feminism,
there's only one thing that we could talk about. I don't know where you were going, but I was going to list off all of the important female characters.
Oh, you're going to list them? I just was going to take some time to talk about each of them.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how many there are, because there's fair
Beatrix,
Garnet, Garnet's mom,
Echo,
yeah.
Quina is a character whose gender is not identified, so I want to throw them in there because of the fact is that we're talking about feminism and we're talking about a character whose gender is not. If
you want to go to like how. If you want to think of a non-binary character in video games,
Quina is so non-binary.
Like I love me some Quina. Quina is the non-binary character.
I love Quina. Boy, Quina's hilarious.
Quina is actually. We'll probably talk about this later. Quina is the character who has the least amount of arc in the game.
Yeah,
and part of that is because they are.
That character is optional.
Optional, and so there's not a huge amount, but. Also, it's because Quina kind of has their life figure.
Quina kind of knows what Quina wants to do. Quina don't have no time for nobody.
Quina's got shit figured out.
Quina is amazing. So, okay, we'll get into Quina and them in a second.
Okay, so
then there's Freya.
Cannot
forget the Junk Queen.
Oh, yeah. Freya is... she's real good.
There's the entirety of Beatrix soldiers or troops.
All of Beatrix's soldiers are like
they're the best soldiers in.
They're like somewhere between Valkyries and
shock troopers
and like Grecian troopers.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how Beatrix she feels like ancient Greek hero appearance, but with Valkyrie, blonde.
Her hair is not blonde.
It's like super blonde.
That is like brunette, boy.
I actually can't remember. I thought she was blonde.
It may be dirty blonde if we're thinking about it.
I have smartphones.
Well, but yeah, so we have her troops. Who else? Are we missing any important?
Well, damn, ladies? You are right. That is not blonde at all.
See, I looked above her chest once in a while.
I'm typically looking at the eye patch, and for some reason, I guess I was thinking Nordic. I was just thinking Nordic.
Okay, so let's see. We talked about Beatrice, Freya, Garnet.
Garnet's mom, whose name I can't remember.
Quina. Aiko. Freya.
I think we mentioned Freya three times in this list.
Okay, the troops. Okay. That's all the important ones? Are we missing anybody?
I think that's most of the important ones, but it's worth... Let's just go with the main cast. Garnet, Aiko, Freya.
I almost want to say Zidane's sister. She doesn't have a lot of dialogue.
Yeah,
she's not say over important character, but she is a standout of all the other Monkey Tail people.
But three ladies, and Quina is a non-binary character in a main cast of 8.
Yeah. And
do we really want to count what's his name? Throws
Amrad?
Amrad.
Man!
Amrad is
he's the most useless character.
The lamest of all these characters. His
story is not even fun.
His story is so bleh. Oh, what about the bounty hunter?
The bounty hunter chick. Oh my goodness, what is her name? Fuck. Look up her name. We can't call her bounty hunter chick.
Yeah, no, that'd be lame.
So I'm gonna start while Pagan here looks up. So we're gonna start about that girl, that Beatrix. Beatrix is like taking Wonder Woman
and making her better.
And just making her better. Well,
that might be. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. I was like, no, they're pretty good. She's just cool. Okay, so anyway, Beatrix is the head leader of the military forces there. So an interesting concept in the game is that the good soldiers, the really refined soldiers of Alexandria, are actually all women. The men are also a force that's followed by Steiner. Steiner's in charge of them, but they're like, if you understand the hyena biological hierarchy, the women are fully. Oh, Lonnie is her name. Okay, so the women are in charge of the military force there.
I think it actually would be safe to say that Alexandria is both literally in that it is a queen and kind of culturally a matriarchy.
It's a matriarchy, yes. And so, yeah. So it's matriarchy, and so essentially Beatrix is the top dog out of all of these. And she is the best fighter. She has accomplished both in magic and physical prowess. She's superior to most of the fighters. She's superior to most characters in the game.
She is definitely superior to your party.
She can destroy you. She will destroy you. She is the shit. And the best thing I like about Beatrix is that she is this soldier. She is this person that's loyal to her kingdom, but she isn't this blind fool. When she hears the queen and gives out certain orders, she questions them to herself. She's
actually in a lot of ways, she's having the same conflicts that Steiner's having, exactly, but from the other perspective of the story inside the court.
Yeah, so Steiner is usually out of the court, adventuring with the party, while she is maintaining order and leading her troops to battle and conquering, while still trying to maintain that understanding and identifying of, what's right to herself or what's wrong to herself, constantly through the game, and while still maintaining an entire fleet of soldiers and addressing her queen. It's really amazing that this character was developed this way for a game that's typically dominated by, well, JRPGs are not what I would consider dominated by males, but for an industry that's typically dominated by males, that this character is also presented.
Not only that, but also like a lot of, like, think of the ladies in Final Fantasy VII.
Oh yeah, you have a bartender who has childhood trauma with great assets. We'll call them those. Well, that is her defining feature.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to say that
she has an extremely large chest.
Yeah, well, and what I'm saying here is that in Final Fantasy VII, the two ladies in the part, well, Yuko, I guess, or
boy,
what's
don't
her name?
Even.
Is it Yuko?
Yuki.
Okay. But the two main ladies in the party are really kind of there for TNA.
Not only are they there for TNA, but they're almost their more objectives are. Well, no, they're not that bad.
No, they're not quite that bad.
But they are there for TNA. Like, particularly Tifa.
Yeah.
Which makes me upset because she is one of my favorite characters because of her backstory. And she could have been fleshed out so much more.
And this is part of the problem, is that she is all these things, but she is also TNA. While Final Fantasy IX...
they're not trying to appease your TNA. Don't get me wrong. There's
mentions of sexuality and sensuality, and certainly Beatrix is definitely buxom and
but it is not,
it's not pandering.
It's not pandering. That's not her body is not her personality. And she doesn't use her body. Like, she's in full armor like most of the game. And so you have
and once again, there's this sort of like Grecian or Nordic feeling of like where it's nudity is not like sexual. It's just heroic kind of.
It's kind of like if you see pots of Hercules, it's going to be Hercules with no pants on, primarily, because
that's how the Greeks do.
And so then you also have Garnet, who we mentioned before. Now, Garnet has struggled with a lot of things, and while maintaining that, she's also trying to explore her interest in Zidane, following a romantic relationship. her.
Not to mention the fact that Garnet's how old? 16?
She's 16, so she's going through puberty as we talk about this, and she's going through the fact that she figures out that she can summon deities to aid her in combat. You know, she's going through all these struggles amidst all this betrayal and subterfuge and deceit, and her character doesn't have. She has moments where she's crying and she's upset, like we said. She goes silent. She does not speak, but she keeps striving forward. There's no I'm just distraught. Oh, the man must come and save me.
She's certainly not a damsel.
Yeah.
And
that's
the
important.
One
yes,
time where she was going to be the damsel in the first scene of the game, where the cool. Guiling thief comes to steal the princess from her castle.
She's like, "Hey, you're late. I ordered this a long time ago."
It's not. I can't remember if she's actually the one who set that up, but she is definitely trying to get stoled as a way of smuggling herself out of the country.
I think she did set it up. I want to say she set it up. That she knew someone was coming to get her. She wanted to be captured. She leads the thieving troop. As a matter of fact, before she's captured, she leads Zidane on a chase to get her for her own fun and whimsy. She does all the like daring do's, flips and stuff to get him to come and get her. So not only is she giving off a little bit of that cool, like, you know, that everyone likes, that come hither stuff, but she's doing it in a way where she has the agency. She has the power. She's controlling this guy to come and get her. And even then, when he finally finds her and stuff, it's still not like, oh yeah, now we're dating and I like you now. It's not that. She's like, well, I've been kidnapped. I guess we're friends. Let's be friends for a bit. I need to get to know you. And I think the best thing about that is that Zidane is okay with that. Like, he doesn't stop trying to like hook up with her. He keeps trying, but she's letting him learn that he has to earn her trust, and that the relationship has developed, and he's being respectful of that.
Not only that, but also she's like, you're cute and all, but there's shit. The amount of shit is a mountain.
You are not my priority at this moment, and he can understand that. I think it's important also to reflect upon how the men treat the women in this game, because that's another component of feminism, is that, like, Zidane and Steiner understands that Beatrix is his superior. There's no questioning, oh, because she's a woman, that she's better than me, or no, it's she's better than me. She kicks my ass, and I think she's cool, and I'm going to listen to her. They hook up later. It's pretty cool. But it doesn't happen. None of this happens, oh, we met eyes and we fell in love. No, and the man captured me and saved me. No, it is we have shit to do. I am a military officer. I'm a princess. You are a thief. You are my subordinate. We have things to do. I have to capture you, or I have to lead you to safety, or something like that. And
another moment that I just thought of, when Garnet takes agency over the rest of, like, literally everyone, is the end of Limeblum in the first game. She poisons everyone's meal to put them to sleep.
Yeah, oh boy, Garnet be trolling people. Like, when you think about all the shit, because she really does come off, like, her art design is that frail, small girl that's art in video games. But you're right, like, there's a point where she wants to leave, and they're like, no, you can't leave. We don't let you leave.
Like the king of Limeblum, or was he whatever? Fuck it. He's like, no, I don't know if I dig this plan, so we're just gonna talk, think things through, you know.
And she's like, sure.
And so they go to a banquet where she poisons everyone's food with, like, knockout shit.
And they're like, why ain't you eating? And she like, pizza, dog. And she gone. Like, she
took Steiner and she gone.
Yes. Like, it is, man. Garnet's awesome.
And for a while, there's the split in the party. And she's doing her own thing. And Then that actually does lead to a bit of a damsel situation when she goes back to Alexandria.
Now there are some parts where she gets saved at points, but it's not her
I think
main...
it's actually that's the only point where she gets saved.
Okay.
And
but even then, I think everyone in the game is saved at some point by somebody.
I would honestly say that the biggest damsel in distress needing saving is kinda Zidane.
Yeah.
When he is in Ultra Mope.
Yeah, in the very last part of the game, they hit that epic depression stage. Something, again, I identify with Zidane with, is that, like, he needs the most saving by the end of the game by his friends and stuff. And then, let's see. So that's the film. There's a lot in there. Honestly,
once again, I'm just gonna list off, like, we have the Queen, who is granted, the Queen is not exactly the best icon of feminism,
but she's another representation of a person being in power regardless of their gender.
Yeah,
and I think that's an important part. Now, she is technically a person that becomes corrupt with power, but it starts from a good place.
She did want to defend her country. And
at the end of it all, I think the game does this in a great way. They make us capable of empathizing with her because we understand it. What leader wouldn't do some extremes for their country and their daughter? And
Kuja did put the mind fuck on her.
Yeah, and she was also manipulated extremely well by Kuja, who we will get into. And I think that's important because when we're looking at feminism, we're not looking at just this happy-go-lucky everyone's friends thing, but looking at it from everyone being equal and having the same opportunities and seeing the same struggles. And we can identify that, oh yeah, well, this king and that leader were fine. And even though they had these struggles, but, you know, to say that she's not a shining example of feminism, I don't know. She may be. Like, she's an example of how power can hurt anyone, and how a person who has power can always mean well but not always do what is thought. And I think that's important to reflect upon.
It does, and it also gives the game, you know, like, showing you can contrast Beatrix as a woman in power with the Queen. Yes.
So you can see different forms of power within different women in the game. But then, I guess...
and just to sate your curiosity, we did look it up. The bounty hunter chick was named Lanny.
Yeah, I like Lanny. Her weapon was awesome.
Dude, it was a fucking big-ass axe.
So, we will get into also, I guess, going into... Did you want to go finish these two, or we can go into these two themes?
Well, that wasn't actually a theme.
Oh, you just wanted to add that one in there? Okay.
Yeah. So,
I guess we can touch on really quickly here about love and friendship. We've talked about it a lot throughout these themes so far. I like love and friendship in this game mainly because everything feels organic. No one becomes friends outright. No one falls in love outright. They're all things that have to happen through time and understanding.
They do become fast friends, but the friendship is
it's ever growing.
Yeah.
There's even that one scene with Vivi and Zidane where they pee.
Yeah,
that was one of my favorite scenes. They're like just having a bro moment, and they're just pissing in the wind. And it's just, that to me was probably one of my favorite parts of the game.
It's like, hey kid, did you know that since you have this, you can pee anywhere?
It's nice. It's a nice moment for if you want to look at like a great way to see a positive man bonding experience. It's weird because they're peeing, but it's great.
Yeah.
But then there's also other friendships. Aiko and Freya and Zidane have a really cool friendship to me. How the fuck did we do feminism and not talk about Freya?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff, and we kind of... Yeah, but we talk about Freya.
So Freya! Oh my goodness.
We also haven't talked about her and loss, and we haven't talked about her and love.
This series!
Freya actually has a lot of shit going on for a character who comes in a bit late.
Who all have played this game. We are sorry. We were talking about feminism, and we missed the character. Her name starts with an F. Freya... Freya is a Dragoon Lancer. They're spear users. She comes from a race of rat people.
Like we said, there's furries in the game.
Yeah, and their culture, good lord, their culture is so well developed. I'm not going to even get into how, like, to explain. I mean, their culture is well developed from a story standpoint. Freya deals with, she literally encapsulates all of the, except identity in race. I think she's pretty certain
race
of that.
She kind of has to deal with because she's, but even then it's like
minuscule. It's very minuscule. But all the other things about acceptance, death,
loss,
feminism,
and death,
friendship, love, she has all of that. So
hers is like one of the most tragic stories in the game.
So you can get into a bit of hers if you want.
So before you meet her, she and Zidane had developed a friendship as, I guess the two have been adventurers and they've done shit before.
We are kicking an hour and 20 minutes.
I ain't even started. Y'all better sit down and get those soft headphones for this one. But sorry. That set me off track. Okay. She and Zidane knew each other, but she also she has been either an adventurer or someone in the service of the Burmacan military and government. And another person who was high up was, what was his name? The guy she was looking for.
Oh, I can't think of her lover's name. Her former love's name.
Yeah. But he had been like always he was what's that word? That Japanese word for another upperclassman?
Oh, senpai.
Yeah, he was senpai to her. And it's a really good way of describing their relationship because he was just always that one step ahead in battle and in rank, and she always aspired to him and respected him. But then one day he says, I ain't feeling it. I'm just, I'm out.
I'm out.
Peace. I'm gonna go explore the world and find myself. Maybe become a Buddhist.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so that's where you meet her in the game when she's first introduced. Is she is trying to find Fratley?
I don't know.
Shoot, I cannot remember his name. But he you eventually then, and you're meeting her away from her home city, and then at the end of the Limeblum event, which is where you meet her in Limeblum once you've gotten there, and then a Limeblum soldier or emissary comes in and he's like, shit be whack, yo, they be attacking, what the fuck? And they all have to leave for that immediately, and when you get to her city, it has been sacked by the Alexandrian military. And she has to deal with the fact that her country has just been completely wrecked, and you have to deal.
I do believe wrecked is an understatement. If I am correct, they summoned Odin.
That's the sister city. That's the sister city.
Freya goes through some shit.
Freya goes through some shit.
So her city is destroyed. Her home city where she's from. She has her sister city with her. Are they the more nature inclined?
They're like the more clerical, more like monkish.
Yeah. So her sister city is essentially where they go to reach safe haven after her first city got sacked, and this city is like in the middle of a desert. It's protected by a storm. It's amazing, and it's very peaceful and serene.
Knew he was called Fratley. That is his name.
And essentially what happens is that you go to the city, blah, blah, blah happens, and it is speared to death by Odin. They summoned a deity from the skies. He throws a gigantic spear that eradicates the entirety of her people. Not the entirety. Some of them make it out. But essentially she loses 2 homes within the same year, and
within like the same span of a week or something.
Yeah, and she's forced to have this unrequited love.
Yeah, because you before it is destroyed, you find Fratley. That was his name. Unfortunately, he has amnesia and can't remember jack shit.
So he can never remember her. So her love, the love of her life, is pretty much lost to her. And she has to go through that, and she not only takes that in stride and struggles with that. I think she takes it in stride as best as anyone can. She still fights back, and
she takes it in stride mostly because by that time the adventuring group is like really dealing with shit.
Yeah,
and she's kind of throwing herself into work.
Well, yeah, she does. She does throw herself into work throughout it all. And this is a great thing about seeing how each character handles trauma and loss, like we said before in the game. And I just think they do it in an amazing way. So when constructing that, when it comes to like Freya and just not only feminism and everything, she feels to me as the best character to embody all these things. She's one of the strongest characters that I can think of in the series, and this also comes her unique way of handling things and her unique way of life also is projected in her unique fighting style, which is amazing. But moving from Freya and those topics, I guess we can get into, let's see here. We have theater gameplay you wanted to look at?
Well, that was just a part of this episode is just going to be us squeeing over things, and I love the theater gameplay at the very start of the game where you're playing through that play, and there's the mini game where you're
and Pagan is hopping in the room now, imitating the game because he really liked that part.
Oh man,
it is amazing. Yeah, it is. The play part is one of my most memorable parts of the game, and it is it's good. So when you play that game, enjoy that part because it doesn't happen again, and it's really cool. Then let's see here.
We've kind of talked about this.
Yeah, we touched that. We touched on that.
Yep. We could talk about your boy.
Okay, so Blank, that is his name, is that boy. Blank is one of my favorite characters. So let me tell you about Blank. Blank is not a main character. You don't get to play him. He's a side character. Home Dog is Zidane's best friend. And in the very beginning of the game, he's seen as like the slightly more mature version of them. They're either the same age or Blank is 1 year older or something. But he's the guy that looks out for the riffraff of Zidane. And so
he'd be like, yo, that shit is wickedy whack.
From what I look at as Blank always has freaking Zidane's back no matter what. He is the guy. He is the straight man to Zidane. He is the guy that's always keeping Zidane everything in check. Where Zidane goes off the rails, Blank is there to improvise with him and make it work. And when I mean he always has his back, he literally always has his back. So there's a part of the game where you're running from this forest and it's petrifying and you're all running trying to get out. Blank knocks Zidane out of the way just so Zidane can live, and Blank is petrified for the majority of the game. And this is a spoiler. Blank is saved again later on in the game, and as soon as he's saved, what does he do?
And not only that, but here's another bit of Ludo narrative integration. Petrify is a status in the game that you can cure with soft, but they say that the petrification magic on the forest was so bad that not even soft could cure it.
Yeah.
And so what did they use to cure not just one person but the entire fucking forest? The super soft.
Yeah.
Which is, admittedly, it's a little bit, but it's at least a tip of the hat to the gameplay.
Yeah, it's very acknowledging that this substance is so powerful that your normal gameplay methods won't help it. And so what does Blank do when he's unpetrified? The first thing he does is go help out his boy Zidane while they're in trouble. There's not much else to Blank. He is an amazing person. Everyone should have a Blank in their lives. He's awesome. Moving on.
Okay, I think a couple more squee moments, I guess, with
So-
the card game.
Yeah.
Because there's not much else to talk about.
Yeah, so there's Tetramaster, which is addictive.
It ruins lives.
It is one of the best card games ever designed for video games.
It's a very interesting mini game that is based on good placement and good choices of what you're going to bring. Because you only get like 6, I think, cards that you can bring to a game.
Yeah.
And the board is
9 slots.
And you have to just be very cautious of where you're going to place things and what are you going to say for your trump card. And yeah, just a damn good solid mini game that is throughout the entirety of the game, and it's a fuck ton better than Blitzball.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Play that part. And then,
it even features into the story in a couple of times.
Yeah. So we did story development, did all that. So one more piece. This piece.
I think we're going to touch on that in the lightest of way, right?
Well, we've done a lot of stories.
Yeah, we've already kind of talked a lot about the story.
Throughout the entire conversation. We talked about the story, and so we don't get too deep into it. Or
we've talked around it, at least.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much of it, but long story short, the story development in 9, again, is just like its artwork. It's organic, and it's alive, and it's moving and changing. It's just well designed. It warps around its characters, but it's also, there's a history behind everything. I just feel that's well done.
The world feels lived in. The characters are vibrant and enjoyable to be around. The villains are the villains are meaningful and have reason for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a big importance.
The story is resonant. It works. It is a damn fine story.
Yeah, it's a fucking amazing story. So we're gonna get into one of the best parts of this game.
The big bad.
The big bad. Kuja. Now Kuja. There's some things I like about Kuja.
Are there things you don't like about Kuja?
No, not really. So
how fucking hard he is?
Yeah. Fuck that.
Trance is a bitch.
Yeah. So Kuja is the villain. He's the main bad guy. There's a lot of things I love about Kuja. One, Kuja is a villain that does not meet the standards of what your villain should be. Now there's some problems I have with him, and some things the same things I have a problem with him I love about him. Kuja is what people would refer to as being having female characteristics or being effeminate.
I'd say he you would not be faulted for having a couple of question marks above your head
with
about
Kuja.
his gender.
And the thing is, I like about that is that Kuja is a character that's very cool with who he is, and also
he don't give a fuck.
And also the other characters, that is not a question about Kuja. It's not, Kuja has nail polish on, or Kuja is showing off so much skin. Kuja shows off so much skin.
Kuja shows off infinite skin.
And so Kuja, that's something I love because, well, it's showing a bit of an acceptance of character identity and being able to express oneself. But then there's the problem with Kuja being the villain that's doing this. And even though Zidane has actually qualities that would also align with that, he dresses in a more traditional
Oh, okay. Damn. No.
Man-oriented. What are you doing?
I can't. I'm not certain if that's the city or if that's cosplay.
That's cosplay, dude.
Damn. It's good though.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So Kuja is an amazing character because he is working on all the machinations behind the scenes.
Definitely kind of a Bond villain.
Yeah, he's always manipulating, but then he also has the power to back it up. He doesn't fight because he can't. He doesn't fight because he doesn't feel anyone's worth his time. He very much has this he plays a bit of a foil to Zidane in ways because not only are they the same species, but where Zidane is confident and friendly and making connections and things like that, Kuja is almost overly confident to the degree that he feels himself a god amongst the little creatures of the planet that he's on Gaia. And he says that as many times as possible. And
he lets you know.
And so, that being said, Kuja is a character that has a lot of representation of an overabundance of power, but also the fact that Kuja is always trying to please his father figure, Garland. He's almost like a Loki. And not just Loki from the comics, the Loki that you guys all know from the Marvel Universe. He was first. Yeah, he was first. Yeah, I think Final Fantasy. Yeah. Kuja was first before we had a Loki. And
wait, okay.
Kuja's character in the game was first before we had a Loki in the movies.
Yes, he came out well before Thor. And he also came out well after Norse mythology.
Well, yes. Do you really think the people who are listening to this podcast assume that I was talking about the Norse god? Because when I say Thor, what is the first thing you think of? Thor from the Marvel comics. Let's be real.
No, fair enough.
Let's be real.
But
hell, when I said Odin, they probably thought of Odin from the Marvel comics and not the Odin from Final Fantasy.
I'll be honest, when you say Odin, the first thing I think of is American Gods. But that's me.
Yeah.
But that's me.
But what do you have to say about Kuja?
Oh, I have to say Kuja, I'm going to talk about how I remember meeting Kuja in Burmica after your shit gets kicked in. Or I think you meet him before your shit is about to get kicked in by...
You see him off screen a lot, but you never meet him with your main characters.
He dances around the main characters for a significant portion of time. And you get this foreboding sense about him that he is beyond your kin. He certainly gives the implication of that. But the other thing that really strikes me about Kuja is his... what you were saying about Garland, but... he was sent to that planet to destroy life on that planet, and he's been doing a bang-up job of it. But at the same time, Zidane is the Mark II, and Zidane was going to be better. Mm-hmm. And Kuja cannot accept that, really. That is something that drives him...
it's like if you have it's like having a sibling. Like, you're born to a family where athleticism is really high on the list, and you're really good at a sport because you've practiced at it and you worked at it. Then you have a sibling that's born a few years after you that just takes to it. Like, they have
a talent.
They're just better at it naturally than you are. And your family is more prideful of that than the hard work you put in.
The other thing that really stands out about Kuja is his desire for immortality, or at the very least his abject refusal to accept his own death.
Yeah. So,
like the black mages that we talked about earlier, Kuja and Zidane are manufactured, and they have a limited duration.
Yeah. And not only that, but when you fight him in the game, you have a ultimate form known as trance. Every character has it, and trance is thought of like your ace in the hole. So when you're battling Kuja, there's a point where you beat him, and you beat Kuja. But because Kuja is so in refusal to die and lose, he gains the ability to trance.
Now, trance is actually a part of the narrative of the game, or at least it is touched on. So it is a recognized part of the world, and people don't really know much about it other than like it's supposed to be a part of legend where great heroes could transform and do incredible feats.
Yeah, enhance their strengths.
And the you've just been using it as a limit break throughout the game without really knowing much about it. But then later on in the stage, when you're about to fight Kuja, it is you learn that trance is a rare state, but it can only be achieved by immense anger and immense like a flight or fight taken.
It's Super Saiyan.
Yeah, and Kuja probably should not have been able to do it by the mechanics of the rules set up there, but then he does, and
that makes you shit your pants.
Oh God, he destroys Terra.
Yep.
Like the planet that was trying to consume the other one, he destroys that one in a fit of pique.
Yep. And it's important to understand that, well, not important, but a good note to understand is that trance comes from Final Fantasy VI and R3, depending on what you know. And it's a mode that one of the characters has. That's just a new cool thing that they integrate from other games. But yeah, so that's an important way of, again, combining your narrative and your story with your gameplay mechanics. This is how it's done right. So I think we've touched on all that we can think of touching on for Final Fantasy IX. I will not say we won't come back to this. We may take an entire episode to deconstruct one character, because we can.
We didn't really talk much about Aiko.
Oh man, I feel bad, kind of.
She's really cool.
She's cool. The thing is about Final Fantasy IX is Amaret's the only bad part of that game.
Is the low point.
And he can even be better than some characters in other games. So, Final Fantasy IX, concluding everything, is just a work of art. It is...
Indeed.
It is good. I suggest you play it regardless of if you like video or you love video games or not. It's a great teacher in different ways. It's a great opportunity to explore ideas that you may not be able to relate to or completely, or may not have the opportunity to experience, depending on your opportunity and how you look at it. And sometimes it's a good way to analyze and interpret your life. If you're young, if you're a teenager, and you may have questions about things, aside from just asking an adult and talking to people your age or people you trust and respect, also play Final Fantasy IX. It will surprise you.
If nothing else, help make the game popular so that people will know who I'm cosplaying as.
I don't actually know if I want my indie cred to be taken away with this game. But I will say this. It will be great if more people knew about Final Fantasy IX, because popularizing a game helps enrich the culture more so that we get more games like it. And again,
I would definitely prefer more Final Fantasy 9s to 13s.
Oh my God, you want to talk about destruction of everything holy? Everything we mentioned in Final Fantasy IX is destroyed in Final Fantasy 13, by the way. And so it's important. I stress that you play it. Not only gives you some old school gaming, but it's a really good game. Everything about it is fun. The stories will make you cry, laugh, have fun, be angry. Every character has a great dynamic to them. Just go out and play. I guess in closing, we could do We could say one thing that's most memorable to you about Final Fantasy IX.
The thing
Just
that
one thing, because I'm
the
pretty
thing
sure
that's most memorable to me about Final Fantasy IX is when you finally get the airship, and I spent the next 10 minutes just flying around the world.
Okay.
And I said, "Wee!" the entire time.
The most memorable thing, since you did gameplay, I'll go with gameplay. Because we did talk a lot about the story. The most memorable thing for me in gameplay, no, I won't get into that because no one understand it.
Was it thievery?
No, I was going to talk about the last boss battle and how I won.
Oh my god!
But the most, we'll get into that in a second. Actually, that'd be a cool thing for everyone to do. Okay, so most memorable thing for me is the mini games when it came to the frog swamp. And so in Quina's world there's a frog swamp, and you have the ability to catch frogs, and you get points for her ability frog drop, and you also get cool items with it. And so I would just sit in that swamp for just hours just trying to catch these frogs. They're so hard to catch. And so I would not leave the area until you caught the frogs. And it was just really memorable because I'm sitting here playing this great epic game with a great story, but I'm sitting here taking at least an hour of this game time to catch frogs.
And you could also lose yourself in the chocobo.
The chocobo, that was the other one I was thinking about. You keep digging all day with the chocobo. And so, but what I want to ask everyone to do,
and when you saw that it was like 60 meters down, you were just like, I hit gold.
You're like, dig, you chicken. And so what I'm going to ask everyone to do is that if you play JRPGs and you like to play the boss battles, in our comments section, if you could please tell us, what was the craziest boss battle you've had? Like, how did you win this boss battle? I know for me it was in Final Fantasy IX. I literally beat the game because Zidane was in a drunken rage. So in the final game, there's a boss who can put all sorts of status effects on all your party members. So he put them on all my party members and made Zidane confused and berserked and something else. He was poisoned too. So essentially, my party was dead because Zidane ended up attacking them in his confusion. Sorry. And he was the only character left. And the boss didn't have a lot of HP left either. So Zidane, in his confusion, he had a 50% chance of hitting himself and a 50% chance of hitting the boss. He hit himself, he was going to die. So he ended up hitting the boss and finishing him off. That was intense. I thought I was going to lose the game. But that was me.
I actually had literally the same experience of not going into that boss fight prepared for all these status effects, trying to beat him in a normal way, quickly failing. Zidane was berserk, and Zidane actually chopped up every other.
Yes,
he was like Barry the Chopper, just hacking that meat. And then he hit Necron.
Reference. But yes,
and a Fallout 3 reference.
Fallout 3.
Well, both of them at the same time.
Yes. But yes, it's a bunch of F references today.
Yeah.
So tell us how you've beaten JRPGs or RPGs in a really crazy way. Let us know in the comments in this video.
And if you have any Necron stories, feel free to share.
Yeah, if you play Final Fantasy IX, share with us. There's a lot of you out there.
I'm certain that every time someone beats Necron, it's somehow derpy.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of you guys out there. So we are up to like 42, 43 subscribers as of today.
Thank you.
I would like to thank all of you guys. We reached this from like 19 episodes. I mean, we had 19 subscribers when this started. So that's a lot of fucking people. Glad you guys can stand the horribleness of our voices. And we will hopefully have up next week. We're hoping to do an episode on Iron Man. the movie. It's going to be part of our Marvel of the Month series that we're going to do each month, where we review and critique one of the Marvel universe movies. And we're going to do a giveaway in regards to that. We'll give you some more details soon, hopefully, in regard to that. So keep an eye on our webpage and our Twitter and our Facebook for that. Essentially, how it'll work is that you just kind of spread the word about us, and we will pick from one random person, and we will send you a pretty awesome Iron Man oriented gift. So, without further ado, this is Hazak
and Pagan,
and we are signing off, and thank you for listening to our extremely long episode today.
Thank you for playing.